Okay, so my topic is toward a reevaluation of the role of leadership in management, and I'm going to start in a unusual place. What is leadership first? Leadership is demonstrated when the ability to inflict pain is confirmed, said Robert Nusslet, the CEO of FMC. And I don't know about you, I don't particularly want to work for Robert Nusslet with that kind of mentality. I really like what Jimmy Wales said. He's the CEO of Wikipedia. Treat all workers as volunteers. And there was something that really sang to me about this. I come from a little bit different place than some of my peers at my university, in that my PhD is in organizational leadership. So I see the world a little bit differently than some of my peers who have a management background or something along those lines. So let me keep going forward here. What is management? So traditionally, if you look in the textbooks, you'll see management will consist of planning, leading, organizing, and controlling, and that's pretty standard. And then if you look at what it is, planning is creating a plan, defining goals, establishing strategy, problem solving. It's top to bottom. Managers create the plans, and the workers just go do the work. And then leading is directing and coordinating work. It's motivating workers to carry out the plan. It's harnessing followers. It's positional, and it's also leading by example. Organizing is defined generally as determining what's to be done and who's to do it. Organizational charts, mechanistic model, it's job descriptions, the chain of command, the whole 9 yards. Controlling is evaluating, monitoring, ensuring compliance, enforcing rules, supervising, and rewarding and punishing. Now, as I was thinking about this and looking through this, now what you see on your screen, by the way, I asked my class the other day. This is a senior class who already had management and was in my organizational theory class. Tell me what's in the textbooks. And essentially, this was what they said. I polished the language just a touch, but it's essentially what they said, and it's essentially what's in the textbooks. Now, we're going to focus on the leading, directing and controlling work, motivating workers to carry out the plan, harnessing the followers, and it's positional as well as by example. Let's look at that. So I looked at a dozen leading textbooks a few years ago. I wrote my own text for my classes, and so I used these particular textbooks, and so I'm going to show you what it says about leading and leadership in these texts. So the definitions of text of leadership: a clear vision, energizing and enabling organizational members, achieving organizational goals. The process to get used to members of the organization, to get members to work together, motivating and directing, influencing people to work hard, motivating employees, directing activities, communications, resolving conflicts, understanding people and being able to work well with them, motivating, directing, influencing people to work hard. And so there were a few that didn't have any definitions of leadership in it. Okay. And so I went to what is leadership rather than leading. And I looked at it and said, an individual exerts influence, inspires, motivates, directs activities, and influence to shape goals, motivate behavior toward goals. Leadership is the process of directing behavior of others. Leadership is the ability to influence employees. Leadership, to influence people to adhere to one's decisions. Now, listen to the language that's being used. Adhere to one's decisions. Like, you make the decisions and then you take this leadership thing and go make people do it. It's a very different model. Influence employees to voluntarily pursue organizational goals. Social influence process, inspiring and guiding others. Influence people toward attainment of organizational goals. And then there were a few textbooks that didn't have definitions for leadership at all. Okay, now the conclusion, if you follow the textbook language, is that leadership is about motivating, influencing, and directing. Or maybe that it's reduced to motivating, influencing, and directing, and that's all. And I thought, something's not right here, because this is not enough. Directing, motivating, harnessing followers is not really all that leadership's about. So it led me to another place. And I started thinking, let's see, the way that this works, top managers plan, and then they motivate people to work. Go be motivated. Motivate, I say. And somehow between the plan and the motivation, something falls apart. And then they organize for efficiency, and they're trying to get people to fit into the boxes on the organizational chart. And then they have to control them and make sure that they're monitoring, so they're doing what they're supposed to be doing, and they're supervising, and then they're rewarding and punishing. And so it doesn't really work like it should work. So something wasn't right, so I started looking at it a little bit deeper. So it doesn't work because there's inefficiency, miscommunication, demoralization, distrust, a lack of ownership, lower productivity, absenteeism, higher turnover, workplace deviance. All kinds of problems come out of this system where we compartmentalize what leadership does. Now, to look at what it's supposed to do, I started saying, what if we look at the academic literature? And so I went into the academic books, the academic literature, Harvard Business Review, and Journal of from the Academy of Management, and things along those lines. And I asked myself, what is leadership according to the literature? And what I found was that motivation and influence were there, but so was vision, so was relationship, so was change, so was emotional connection, leading by example, and much, much more. So let me walk you through that really quickly as well. Motivation. So for example, same thing, motivation is core to leadership. Leadership is about more than motivating and more about motivating and inspiring than it is about controlling. Influence. Tim Tebow was one of the most influential people in the world. Well, what kind of influence does he have? He can't really tell me to do anything, but that's what influence is. It's not force. The influence leadership is the influence increment over and above mechanical compliance. The true measure of leadership is influence, and leadership is not about force. It's about persuasion, vision. These two are fairly visionary. How do you do it? Well, vision happens to be a long process, and it includes a shared vision, sense-making, setting direction, a clear purpose, planning, a compelling future. All those things are part of having a vision about where we're going and how we're going to get there. So relationship. Leadership is better defined as a process or a relationship, and relationship is a core ingredient of leadership. Emotional connection. And leadership is an emotional activity inherently. Where management is rational, leadership is emotional. You don't want to follow somebody who's cold and calculating and will do you in and say, well, it's just business. You want to follow somebody who has your best interest at heart. Mentors, for example, make emotional connections with their proteges. This is the chairman, Herb Kelleher, the chairman of or CEO of Southwest Airlines for a number of years. His people put in USA Today this ad. Thanks, Herb. Thanks for remembering every one of our names. Thanks for listening. Thanks for singing at our holiday parties. Thanks for singing only once a year. Thanks for being a friend, not just a boss. Now, when you're doing this, when you're leading so well that your employees are putting this at their own expense in USA Today to thank you, you're doing something really, really right. Change. The process of leadership is change. The purpose of leadership is change. Management is about coping with complexity. Leadership is about coping with change. Leading by example. This patch summarizes leading by example. This is the symbol of the U.S. Army Infantry School, that I believe at Fort Benning. And follow me, not go take that hill, I'll be in the back where it's safe. That's not leadership. Leadership is follow me. Leadership is the process of persuasion. The first step is modeling the way. Those that set performance high for themselves earn credibility. Leadership, its results come from empowering others. Even servant leadership. Christ demonstrated this by washing the disciples' feet and saying, "Do you see what I did here? I want you to go and do the same thing." This is a great book if you ever get a chance to read it. Captain Abrashoff turned around one of the worst ships in the Navy and made it one of the best ships in the Navy. A leader will never accomplish anything by what he or she wants by ordering it done. Real leadership must be done by example, not by precept. Other factors related to leadership included alignment, credibility, duplication, distributed leadership, empowerment, developing character, emotional intelligence, adaptive change, self-knowledge, that is, you have to know yourself and your own strengths, and authenticity. Okay, so let's go back to the chart now. What is management? So management is planning, leading, organizing, and controlling. And particularly, we want to go back one and look at what is leadership. Leadership is directing and motivating, but it's so much more. So I was asking myself this question: is there more to leadership than motivating, influencing, and directing? Of course there is. Now, what I've underlined here are things that already we've counted for in the textbook, but there's so much more in the literature about what leadership is. So now I asked myself another question: how would a robust view of leadership change the way that we lead? So if we applied all leadership to all the managerial processes, would it be significantly different? And I think it would be. Here's what I'm saying. So here's the chart again, and then we take leadership and all that is involved with leadership, the influence, the persuasion, the motivation, the vision, the sense making, setting direction, all of these things, right? And we apply it into planning, leading, organizing, and controlling. You have a very, very different picture. Okay? Now, so here's planning. Planning is, again, creating a plan, defining goals, establishing a strategy, problem solving. It's top to bottom. Management plans, the workers' work. Okay, that's planning according to the text. But we're going to strike out top to bottom. Management plans, workers' work. That really doesn't fit with leadership. Let's put this aside for right now, and then let's look at this. Henry Ford said, "Why is it that I always get a whole person when all I really want is a pair of hands?" Right? That's the way that management generally thinks about planning. I'm going to go in a back room somewhere and plan out what you can do or can't do, and then I'm going to come in and flick my plan upon you. Why do we do it that way? We should emphasize a vision, establish a purpose, a compelling future that we all desire. Sense making, it's setting direction, it's empowering others, it's duplicating leaders. Now, I don't know about you, but in this process, I need to interact with people. In fact, as you do that, you will find that you're more empowered. Now, there's a lot of literature about empowerment and being happy at work. In fact, what they say in books like Happier or The Happiness Advantage is that if you actually have if you have a happy employee, he's more productive, and if he's more productive, he's more profitable. Isn't that great? Actually, you have to back up a step. You have to do it for the right motive, in my estimation. And that is, if you understand that this other person is a sentient being made in God's image, he has hopes and dreams and aspirations, then yes, you're going to look and see what can he contribute to this? And as you do ask him to do that, you're empowering him, and then you get this happiness advantage of them being a part of what it is that is going to be occupying their tasks daily. Not a plan imposed upon them, but they actually have a say. So this will entail that you influence and are influenced. Stephen Covey said, "I can't influence you unless I'm first open to influence." And unless managers are willing to open that up in the planning process and empower and involve others from the start and consult with them, then you're not going to be open to influence, and they won't give their best. Now, the best part is that if you do this right, you're not going to come and inflict your ideas upon them. They're going to come to you with their ideas. And then there's no obstacle to motivation. You don't have to go motivate when they're already coming to you with their ideas. Okay? So Patton said, "Never tell people how to do things. Tell them what to do, and they will surprise you with their ingenuity." That's what will happen if you start to lead in the planning department. Okay, so again, that will require spending time with people, team building, planning as an opportunity to develop future leaders. That should be your goal if you're thinking through leadership. How do I use this planning process to grow them, to give them opportunities to be able to grow in leadership? Okay, let's switch gears. Before I do that, look, you're still going to create a plan. You're still going to find goals. You're still going to establish a strategy, problem solve, but you're going to do it in an empowerment kind of methodology. Okay? Now, in Good to Great, Jim Collins talks about how great leaders are incredible, fierce will plus humility. Again, to listen to what people have to say that are, your junior or your subordinate. That takes some humility to hear. Maybe they know things that I don't know. Okay, so that's going to be an important process. Cruz and Posner in the Leadership Challenge, they talk about something from something similar from a different way. If you want to be trusted, first you need to extend trust to your people, and as you extend trust, you'll get more trust. Okay, let's look at leading. Leading is going to be that robust column that I gave you before. It's not just directing and motivating, although that is part of it. Okay, get rid of this harnessing followers, and you harness a horse, you don't harness a person. Okay, influencing, persuading, motivating. Yes, that's there, but it's more. It's personal relationship, emotional connection, mentoring and modeling, servant leadership, authenticity, and credibility. And the implications here is that you're going beyond managerial motivation. You're not just going, be motivated, follow my plan. No, because they already have their plan. They're already motivated. So now what you need to do is know yourself, know your people, know how they fit into the organization, emphasize trust, restrain yourself. When I say restrain yourself, I mean don't do too much. Don't do what somebody needs to grow. Restrain yourself when you talk, because we've all been in that place where, like, I'd like to tell the boss this, but I want to keep my job. But and so you say that as a subordinate looking up, but as a leader looking down, you need to restrain yourself even more, because if you don't restrain yourself, what's going to happen is that person is going to be jaded and go, you know what? If that's how he's going to be, I'm not going to do it. I'm out. I'll give the minimum that I need to get by. Okay? So you need to restrain yourself. Your purpose is to grow leaders. That's the idea. If you look through the lens of leadership, grow leaders. Okay, an institution is the lengthened shadow of one man, said Ralph Waldo Emerson. I think he's right. I can tell you, if you can describe for me the leadership in your organization, I can describe how efficient and how profitable you are very easily, if you can accurately describe that. And vice versa. If you can describe how much you love going to work or how much you hate going to work, I can tell you about the leadership at the top of your organization. Okay? Now, let's look at organizing. Organizing is very important as well. Determining what is to be done, organizational charts, the mechanistic model, job descriptions, chain of command. Some of this is going to go away because, Stephen Covey in The Eighth Habit, he's talking about going from effectiveness to greatness. How do you go from effectiveness to greatness? You allow your people to find their voice. So you're more interested, instead of in the organizational chart, you're more interested in alignment. So you're going to scrap some of this, like in Good to Great, Jim Collins talks about getting the right people on the bus, getting the right people in the right seat. That's more important than having the right job for them on the organizational chart. Again, you're talking about alignment instead of relying on the organizational chart. Distributed leadership, that is different levels of leadership throughout the organization. Utilizing emotional intelligence, expecting change. Change is a natural process, and we have to expect it, not try to control it and stop it, but expect change. And then as a consequence, you're going to have to deal with people in a different way. In the book Joy at Work, Dennis Bach talks about how we don't treat everybody equally. That's not the goal. We treat everybody individually. So by necessity, we're treating them differently. Now, when you treat people differently, what comes with that, the implications here are that you're going beyond efficiency of the organizational chart. What looks good on paper doesn't necessarily work. Okay? You remove obstacles. You maximize individual strengths by looking at their talents, knowing them. You treat all your people differently. It's an organic process, and you're organizing in order to grow your leaders. Okay? You don't want followers. You want leaders. You're trying to grow them. The book Hug Your People is interesting. Jack Mitchell talks about how we call our people associates, not employees. They work with us, not for us. We're not checking up on them. We're checking in to see how we can help them. Now, that's important. You call them associates. Well, Walmart calls their people associates too, but it's not just what you call them, it's what you actually do. Do you micromanage, or you try to aid and support? How can I help you? When you check in, not check up. That's very, very different. Okay? And so controlling, now at this point, you're understanding that the evaluating and monitoring and ensuring compliance and enforcing rules is going to change some. Okay? Supervising, rewarding, and punishing, you still need to do those, but it's not going to be done the same way. In the third habit, Stephen Covey talks about, we have the wrong paradigm. We have this crazy mechanistic model where we're looking back and thinking, you're a cog in a machine. You're not a cog in a machine. You're a human being. And as a human being, you want to be treated like such. So we're going to do these things, but we're not going to do it in the same way. We need to use an organic model where we're growing leaders. We're not just replacing a cog. And again, back to Hug Your People. Have expectations when instead of having rules and regulations, have expectations and standards, not rules and regulations. Again, let me quote this. This is a quote right out of the book. Have expectations and standards, not rules and regulations. And he goes on to clarify, it's not that you don't have rules, it's that you drive your control process with expectations. That's positive, not with negative rules and regulations. Okay? So you're going to have vision driving it. Now, we already talked about this in planning. You're emphasizing the vision there. Vision in controlling. We planted a flag and we're going to rally to that. Vision, relationship, motivation, credibility, mentoring and modeling, leading by example as the control process. Now, what's that going to do for you? Is that going to, if you apply all these things, are you going to have happier employees? I bet you will. And now, here's the thing. I have to read this. This is a great quote from the Happiness Advantage. MIT researchers found that employees with strong ties to their manager brought in more money than those with only weak ties, besting the company average by $588 of revenue each month. Now, in another place, he says this: a longer 15-year study even found that employees who had difficult relationship with their boss were 30% more likely to suffer from coronary heart disease. I mean, that's incredible. In fact, he goes on to say it seems that a bad relationship with their boss can even be as bad for you as a steady diet of fried foods. Now, that's just phenomenal. Why are we not treating people better? We're not leading. Okay, let's go back to the chart. What is it? What are the implications? We're going to evaluate, we're going to monitor, we're going to ensure compliance. That's true, but we're going to do it in an environment of trust, in a personal relationship with your people, where vision is what's controlling them, not that you have to be watched. Ownership, preventative control, being in command, not in control, is a line that I borrow from a Marine Corps general who said, look, my officer on the front line, if we say take that hill, he has control over how he's going to take that hill. Yes, I'm in command. We need to take that hill, but he has operational control. Frontal assault, from the side, a pincer movement, whatever it is, he has to be able to make that decision. Now, where does that leave us as far as what we're talking about now? Niccolo Machiavelli said, it's better to be loved, or is it better to be loved than feared, or feared than loved? And he says it's safer to be feared than loved. And a lot of bosses in corporate America do exactly that. I think there's a better model. Again, you have a choice. This is the old managerial chart. What's taught in the textbooks, unfortunately, is that it's directing and coordinating and motivating and harnessing followers, and it's positional. I think there's a better way, and I think the better way will keep you from the problems that you might otherwise have. You have a number of problems here if you're not very, very careful when you do this. So top managers plan, going to motivating workers, and it causes angst. Going to organizing for efficiency, going to controlling to be sure that their plan is completed. I think the better way is leadership as management. Planning meaning emphasizing vision, involving others from the start, and then when you're leading, it goes beyond motivation. It's emphasizing trust, leading your people, managing your stuff, but leading your people in a true sense. Organization moves beyond efficiency, and it organizes to maximize people's strengths. And then finally, controlling is going to emphasize trust and relationship and vision and ownership. And that's my presentation. Thank you very much for your time. I'll answer any questions that you might have.